You Owe Me One Universe by Chad Lucas. Chapter 19, Goblin Mode, Ryan. A week after my public meltdown, I walked to school in the dark and shot around with Coach before class. It mellowed me out enough that I made it through the day without panicking. So I did it again on Monday, and for the rest of the week. Mom said she was proud of me for working so hard. I grunted. This became my life. Gym, class, practice or game, nap, dinner, homework, bed, repeat. I saw Dr. Bender once a week. I sat with my friends in school, tried to be social, but it was all one big ball of bleh. January stretched on forever. After slogging through a few weeks, everything on earth started getting on my nerves. An incomplete list of things I can't stand. The sound of the school bell. The way Miss Wirth says good morning, citizens. Icy sidewalks, cold weather, everything about winter. How Kevin ends sentences with, you know? I hadn't noticed until recently, now I hate it. Ezra's I'm worried about you face. The school cafeteria, the noise, the smell, people's voices, everything. Literally anything my mom does. Dealing with school all day was irritating, but being home with Mom wasn't any better. The smallest things drove me bonkers, like when she talked to herself, or turned the pages in a book too loudly, or left the hall light on so the glow shone under my bedroom door. I still hadn't visited Dad since Christmas. We talked on the phone, but it wasn't the same. I was a terrible son, but I couldn't help it. It was like I'd been cursed by an evil wizard. Regular Brian was trapped in the basement of my brain, forced to watch cursed monster Brian stomp on everything. I couldn't explain this to Mom or my friends, but I told Dr. Bender about the monster curse in the first week of February. Interesting theory, she offered. Have you run afoul of any sorcerers lately? Stolen any artifacts with evil powers? I shrugged. I've always wondered if my French teacher is into the dark arts. Dr. Bender pondered this. French teachers have been known to practice the occult. My weekly talks with Dr. Bender were like a release valve. I eased into her couch, and it reminded me how tense I'd been from holding in my nastiest thoughts. I know you can't answer this, but when will everything stop sucking so much, I asked. Shouldn't the pills be helping by now? She nodded sympathetically. This is the frustrating stage, right? You're doing all the right things, but you don't feel like it's making a difference. Yeah. Well, I see a difference. You have more energy than you did a month ago. Sure, but it's evil rage energy. First I was miserable, then I barely felt anything, and now I'm constantly angry. I know it's not a fun place to be, but this isn't always a journey that moves in a straight line, I'm afraid. Try to acknowledge what you're feeling without judging yourself for it. Dr. Bender sipped her tea. You said something in January that stuck with me. You mentioned that you felt like you were letting everyone down. So you still feel that way? I thought for a while. I guess so. I'm keeping up with homework and friends and stuff, but I'm still a drag to be around, and I haven't visited Dad in weeks. Often the people we care about have more grace and patience for us than we imagine, Dr. Bender said. I know it's not easy, but try to show yourself some of that grace and patience too. Yeah, I'll try. Fair enough. Is there anything that does give you life right now? I could only think of one thing. Basketball. That's good. Keep playing. I did. I'd live in the gym if I could. I shot in the mornings, and after practice I hung around until Coach was ready to go home. If Gabe wasn't busy, sometimes we'd find an open court after dinner and play some more. It kept me from losing it completely. But another thing happened. All that practice kept making me better. Our first playoff game was against Fairview, the team that beat us before Christmas. Their starting shooting guard, a kid named Jake, gave me a smirk before tip-off that let me know he remembered my meltdown in that game. Jake came out hot and hit 2 quick three-pointers. 3 minutes into the game, we were down 10-3, and Coach called timeout. Come on, y'all, Ty pled in our huddle. We can't lose to these guys again. This is the playoffs. We need to slow Jake down, Coach said. He's getting too many open looks. Let me guard him, Coach, I said. I'll stop him, I promise. Everyone looked at me. I didn't usually say much in our timeouts. Coach nodded. He's yours, Brian. Run him off the three-point line and try to trap him on screens. He surveyed the huddle. Everyone else be ready to help and challenge them more on offense. We're settling for outside shots. Get to the rim. The referee blew her whistle and we headed back to the court. Jake smirked again when he saw me coming. Hope you can keep your cool this time. I didn't say anything. I just glared at him. When his teammate threw him a pass, I picked it off and raced to our hoop for a layup. Ty gave me a high five. That's it, B. Make him work. Jake darted around the court, but I stayed glued to him like I was his reflection. He was quick, but I was just as fast, and my arms were longer. I was also running on evil rage energy. The only thing I cared about was stopping him and winning the game. I stole the ball from him twice more and forced him into heaving tough shots that clinked off the rim. I even blocked him twice. He's fouling me, Jake complained to the ref after I swatted his shot out of bounds. She shook her head. That's good defense. I didn't say a word. I just kept hounding him. He didn't make another three-pointer all game. I hit 2 in the second half as we pulled away and won easily, 58-39. In the post-game huddle, everyone was hyped that we were going to the next round of the playoffs. Coach held up his hand for quiet. Then he looked at me. That's maybe the best defensive game we've played all year. You all played well, but Brian set the tone today. Well done. The hollering started up again. Andre thumped my chest. You were mean out there, man. I changed quickly and left the gym with Ezra and Ty. As we were walking out, Ezra tucked his hands in his pockets. We should celebrate or something. Want to come over? I shrugged. I should get home. Mom's working and I need to pick up Richie from Kevin's. This wasn't exactly true. The Sidus didn't mind letting Richie stay, and he was happier there than at home with me. Ezra's face fell. Oh, okay. Talk to you later? Sure. Ty tilted his head. You good, B? I pulled up my hood. Just tired. Makes sense. You worked your butt off. You were all the way in that kid's head. He patted my shoulder. As I started toward home, Ty and Ezra watched me go before they headed off together. In his cell in the basement of my brain, regular Brian was saying, turn around, go with your friends. But cursed monster Brian kept walking. I shouldn't have been so angry. I had a great game and we'd won, but I still felt full of knives. If I can't be happy now, how am I ever going to be happy? I stopped at the Sidus, though I didn't know why I bothered. Richie made a stink like I'd expected. They said I could stay for supper, he protested. We're having chicken stew. Mrs. Sidhu smiled at me. You're welcome to stay too, Brian. Please, come in. Dinner smelled delicious. Everything the Sidhus cooked was delicious. But I shook my head. I just played basketball and I really need a shower. She laughed, a warm, lilting sound. Don't be silly. It's not like we've never smelled a teenage boy around here, right, Kevin? Kevin wrinkled his nose as he walked into the kitchen. Are you calling me stinky, Mom? That's low. Hey, Brian, did you win? Yeah, by a bunch. Wow, don't sound so excited, Kevin teased. Are you staying for dinner? I shook my head. You can stay, Rich. I'm going to head home. We have plenty of stew, Mrs. Sidhu said, and fresh naan. Come eat. It'll do you good. Yeah, come on, Richie said, please. They were all watching me. Richie gave me his puppy dog eyes. He actually wanted me here. He'd even said please. It smelled so good here. Stay, regular Brian screamed from his cell. Stay. Thanks, but I have homework and, I'm going to go. Before anyone could talk me out of it, before the aroma of spices could win me over, before Richie could grab my arm and drag me back inside, I slipped out the door. It started snowing, falling fast in thick flakes that clung to my eyelashes and burrowed under my collar. I was chilled and damp just by the short walk home. Our house was dark. I shouldn't be here. Mom wouldn't be home for an hour at least. I should have been eating at the Sidhu's or hanging out at Ezra's, anywhere but here, alone. But I didn't want to be around anyone, not when I was like this. Maybe I really was cursed. An awful chant kept running through my head. You'll never get through this. You'll never feel better. You'll never be happy again. I made some peanut butter toast, hoping some food would help, but it only reminded me of what I was missing at Kevin's. I took a hot shower, but that only felt good until I turned off the water and goosebumps sprung on my wet skin. The chant grew louder. You'll never get through this. You'll never feel better. You'll never be happy again. By the time I finished dressing, I couldn't stand it anymore. Not the voice of doom in my head, not the itching, restless anger in my chest, not the thought of feeling this way again tomorrow and the next day and the next. It all felt so suffocating. I didn't know if I could keep doing this. Pulling on my boots was automatic, like I was going on cruise control. Regular Brian pled that this was a bad idea, but cursed monster Brian was in control. I had no idea where I was going, only that I couldn't stay in the house. The walls were collapsing on me. I knew I should walk to Kevin's or Ezra's, somewhere safe, but I didn't know if I could bring myself to do it. I kept thinking about how easy it would be to get lost in the snow. Stay, regular Brian begged, and this time it sounded like a warning. I was pulling on my coat when I heard voices and thumping outside. Then the door swung open and Richie and Kevin, Ezra, and Ty piled inside. Their coats were white with snow and they were laughing, but they stopped when they saw me. Brian, Richie said, where are you going? Just for a walk. I need some air. Ty brushed snow from his hair. It's awful out. You don't want to be out there. So why are you all here? It came out sharp, but they didn't react. Kevin held up a grocery bag. I brought stew and cookies. I sighed. Guys, this is not a discussion. Kevin cut me off. You need to eat, and the Sidus never let friends go hungry. He pushed me toward the kitchen. I gave up and took off my coat. The entryway was a soggy mess as everyone jostled to shake off snow. Richie gave me a long stare as he brushed past. Ezra was watching me too. He hadn't said anything yet. Kevin made himself at home in our kitchen, filling a bowl with stew. Eat, he commanded, while it's still warm. He wasn't going to take no for an answer, and my toast hadn't done much, so I sat and ate. It was delicious, of course, rich and spicy, the perfect food for a snowy night. Each bite was like swallowing a hug. As I stuffed my face, Ty told Richie and Kevin about our game. This guy was a beast. He poked my shoulder. Spicy B is an all-star defender. I knew it wasn't a coincidence that they'd all showed up at once. They could tell I was a mess, and they'd conspired to feed me. Cursed Monster Brian was mad about it. They talk about you behind your back. They're treating you like a baby. But regular Brian wanted to cry out of gratitude. They haven't given up on you yet. It also hit me that they weren't just here for me. Ty and Kevin kept making Richie laugh, and Ezra slipped him another piece of naan. They were taking care of my brother, doing what I couldn't because Cursed Monster Brian wouldn't let me. I didn't deserve these guys. As I was finishing, Kevin turned to Richie. Go play your Switch in your room for a bit, okay? Richie scowled. If you're going to talk to Brian, I'm staying. We need to have a grown folks conversation, Rich, Ty said. He made a silly face, but Richie didn't laugh. You're not grown folks, you're in junior high. Then Kevin whispered in his ear, and Richie finally shrugged. All right, deal. He rose slowly, giving me another long stare before heading to his room. What did you tell him? I asked once he was gone. That's confidential. Kevin zipped his lips shut. The kitchen went quiet then. I folded my arms. So is this an intervention? Yes, Ezra said. What's going on with you? I sighed. You know what's going on. I'm depressed. Yeah, but you're supposed to sell us stuff, remember? Lately it's like you can't stand to be around us, like you're not even trying to. You think I'm not trying? Are you kidding me? The words exploded out before I could stop them. Ezra flinched like I'd thrown hot stew in his face. This was what I was afraid of. The moment when I couldn't hold Cursed Monster Brian back and he hurt somebody. I buried my face in my hands. I couldn't bear to look at Ezra right now. I wish they'd all go away and leave me alone like I deserved. No, I don't want that at all. I'm sorry, I mumbled. You looked rough, B, Ty said. That's why we came over. We didn't want you to be alone. You can tell us what's up. I bit my lip. I don't know, I'm just mad all the time. We know that part, Ty said. I mean, your death glare is incredible. I looked up. You noticed? Kevin and Ty laughed. How could we not notice? Kevin said. Yesterday at lunch you almost burned a hole in my face. My cheeks went hot. Sorry. Ty shrugged. I'm sorry you're still feeling so lousy, but it's okay to show some attitude. You were a stone-cold killer in the game today. It was great. I sighed. Yeah, but I ran a hand through my hair in frustration as the words wouldn't come out. No rush, Ezra said. You can tell us when you're ready. Kevin opened the tub of cookies and we ate in silence. They were shortbread, buttery and crisp with a hint of cardamom. Kev really was a genius. If Dr. Bender walked into my kitchen right now, she'd boil the kettle and bring me tea. Then she'd repeat what she'd told me in our last session. Often the people we care about have more grace and patience for us than we imagine. I picked up a second cookie, then I blurted it out. There's a monster in my brain. They waited for me to explain, but I didn't know what else to say. Ezra rubbed his chin. Like the Green Goblin? Ty frowned. What? You know, from Spider-Man. Ezra hunched forward. Remember when Norman Osborn argues with himself in the mirror because the Green Goblin is taking over his mind? Ah, I get it, Kevin agreed. I guess it's kind of like that, I said. I didn't inject myself with super serum, but I feel that way sometimes, like I'm turning into a supervillain. I exhaled. I don't want to be like this, and it doesn't feel like I'm getting better, and I just lose it sometimes. You're allowed to lose it sometimes, Ty said. You can let out the death stare. Kevin stretched. Maybe you need to yell more, like that time you cursed in the middle of a game. Let it out, you know? I'll keep that in mind, Kev, I said. Ty's phone dinged, and he sighed. My dad's here. He didn't want us walking home in the snow. He pushed back from the table. Come on, guys, we'll give you a ride home. Ezra reluctantly rose, and Kevin stood up, too. I walked them to the door. Green Goblin should be our new code word, Kevin said as he pulled on his boots. If you feel like you're going to snap, just say Green Goblin, and we'll give you space or whatever. I like it, Ty said. We got you, even in Green Goblin mode. Thanks, guys. Ezra lingered until Kevin and Ty were out the door. He stared at his boots. I didn't mean to say you're not trying. I know, I said. Thanks for coming over. It helped. Really? Yeah. He hugged me goodnight. I watched as he trudged to Mr. Marsman's car. The snow on the front steps was a couple inches deep already, which meant I'd have to shovel later. Great. As Ty's dad backed out of the driveway, his tires spun before they gripped the road, and he started slowly up the hill. I glanced at the sky and wondered how my mom was trying to get home by bus. How my mom was doing trying to get home by bus. She was usually back by now. As I closed the door, I still felt knotted up inside. My friends had helped, but the goblin voice was still in the background, telling me I'd be stuck like this forever. Maybe Kevin was right. Maybe yelling would drown it out. I walked to the patio door and slid it open. On a whim, I pulled off my socks and stepped onto our tiny deck. My bare feet burned as they sunk into the snow. I took 2 more steps and stood there, focusing on the fire in my toes. I peeled off my hoodie and t-shirt and tossed them inside. The wind whipped snow against my bare chest, and I stretched my arms and yelled as loud as I could. It felt not terrible, so I kept yelling. It was just noise at first, then I added a few choice swear words, and that felt even better. What are you doing? Richie stood in the doorway staring at me. Goblin therapy, Rich, I told him. He leaned out into the cold. Can I try? Sure, you have lots to yell about too. Richie was already barefoot. He never wore socks in the house, not even in winter, and he took off his shirt and stepped outside. He gasped when his feet touched the snow. Go ahead, I said. He clenched his fist. Ah! Richie packed a snowball and hurled it at the backyard fence. Throwing snowballs seemed like an excellent addition to screaming, so I did the same. After we flung a few into the dark, Richie turned and fired one at my chest. It exploded all over my skin, stinging like a million icy needles pressing into my skin. It was kind of amazing. I threw one back at him. He twisted away and it hit him just above his butt. There's snow in my underwear. He did a little dance of agony, then he rushed me and we flung snow at each other and hollered and wrestled. Boys, what in the world? Mom stood in the doorway bug-eyed. I could hear you halfway down the street. Get in before the neighbors call the police. Richie and I piled inside. We were bright pink from the cold. Mom looked me over like I'd lost it completely. I turned to Richie. He grinned. We flung ourselves at her. She shrieked as we dripped melting snow all over her. Then she laughed and tickled Richie until he squirmed away. Finally, she leaned against me and sighed. It had been a long time since I'd hugged my mom. When I let go, she swallowed hard. Brian, how are you doing? She asked in a shaky voice. I don't really feel like talking, I said. I'm going to go change, but there's chicken stew in the kitchen. Kevin brought some over. It's delicious, Richie added. We left Mom and headed to our rooms. I was still shivering after I changed, so I climbed in bed with a book. A few minutes later, Richie showed up with a graphic novel. Without asking or saying anything, he slid under the covers next to me. I let him stay.